Today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Willow Paige Clerici, author of Special Forces. Welcome, Willow.
Thank you for having me, Terry. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited as well. I enjoyed the book. Memoirs sometimes can be a little hard to read because you get like into the depths of people's lives, and it like hurts my soul. But I really enjoyed the book. I found it really fascinating. But before we dive in, can you tell listeners what they're going to get when they open up the cover of Special Forces?
Sure. When you open up the cover, you are going to take an adventure with me through the last 20 years of my life. And that stems the gamut of childbirth, finding out my children have disabilities. You're going to go through divorce, remarriage, spiritual awakening, depression, anxiety, darkness of loss and suicide, cancer. I mean, you were talking like a great movie. It's a good time, and truth and inspiration, ultimately.
Yeah. And I think that the piece that I found so fascinating was just, when you name all of those things and you put them out there, any one of them could knock someone over and make them say, I can't go forward. And yet you experienced all of them. And I think that the piece that I just found so amazing was you kept finding a way to keep showing up despite it all. And I'm not saying it never knocked you sideways, but you would say, okay, so I've been knocked sideways. Now what?
Right.
How do I move on? And I found that really fascinating. What made you decide I've got to write all this down?
For years, in the midst of meeting other families of kids with special needs and talking to other parents, and how often I would find those parents turn to me and say, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. And then, as I would talk to people about, I'm a very open person, have no problem sharing about my life or what I'm going through. I'm pretty transparent. And the more often I would talk to people about things I experienced in my life, the more often I realized people really felt very isolated in their experiences. And I'm like, you're not alone. And so I really heard, in prayer and in knowledge, like, you've got to put this book out. People need to know they're not alone, and that, there is beauty within the experience of all you're going through. It may not feel that way at the time. Right. And, you can come to that space. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. I know I need to write this book. It doesn't, it definitely feels very vulnerable to put your life out there.
It does. Yeah.
In that way. And at the same time, I felt like, this is my experience. It doesn't mean it's yours. And I want to share that so that, people feel like when they're going through these experiences in life, that they aren't alone, and that they are kind of validated in their feelings, and they're part of the human experience. And it's part of how we become who we are.
Absolutely. Very quickly, let's talk just a little bit about your son's disabilities. They have Fragile X syndrome, and I had not heard of it prior to reading your book. And I assume a lot of people who aren't experiencing it personally don't know what it is. Can you give us like the Reader's Digest version of what that is?
So basically, there is a protein that is not made in the brain. And when that protein isn't made, cognitive delay starts to set in. And it's found through a blood test. They do a DNA research. And on the DNA, it's on the X chromosome. So men are XY, women are XX. And it's on the X chromosome. And it looks like the X is broken, in the image. So that thus they called it Fragile X syndrome. And it's like a repeat of this DNA strand, CGG repeat, that starts to occur on the chromosome, and that interferes with cognitive, development, some physical development, things of that nature.
Okay. All right. And so this is coming out in July, which is Fragile X Awareness Month. And so I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to know about that. While you were writing your memoir, I wrote a memoir. My husband and I rode across the United States on a tandem bicycle. So I wrote lessons that I learned while doing this crazy adventure. And I learned things, like kind of discovered them. Did you have that, like as you were writing, that you discovered things that, not that you didn't know, but that you had like maybe put together or realized or whatever while you were writing?
I had the sense of, right, there was a thread right throughout. And I think as I started writing, that tapestry began to really become cohesive. And, as you read God, my spiritual life really was obvious how God was moving through my life through all those seasons. And it kind of like, in the end, it's very overwhelming. Like, wow, you've really been there for me this whole time.
Right? Yeah.
This whole time you've been there, right?
Even when it didn't feel like it in the moment, and even when you weren't realizing it at the time. And then when you look back, it's like, oh, would you look at that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find that's always an amazing feeling when it's like, oh, I haven't been alone this whole time, even though I thought that I was. I think one of the things that I found really amazing was, first of all, how hard you fought for your boys. And not that a parent wouldn't, but how hard you had to fight for your boys. You had them in the public school system, but in various and a sundry, sometimes in private, you just had them in various and a sundry things. But I think the thing I found fascinating is, as someone standing on the outside and you hear something like Fragile X, you make an assumption that all Fragile X will need X, Y, Z. And here you have two boys. They're yours. They're your genetics. They both have this disability, and yet you had to fight separately because what one needed, the other did not.
Yeah. It was, kids are always their own people, even twins, right? They're all going to have their own quirks and be individual. But our oldest was his needs were very different than our middle son. And to watch them grow and to support them individually, took a lot. And the oldest had more needs, still at 22, doesn't read, doesn't write. He doesn't have the dexterity, is joy and light and all the wonderful things. And whereas my middle son, he has a job, he can read, he can write, he can, manipulate a phone. You can have a conversation with him, and you wouldn't necessarily know that there's a disability there until you got a little further into the conversation. Right. And you were like, oh, okay. But we had to really fight for him. I mean, so hard. And what was at the time, besides just exhausting, it was heartbreaking that we had to fight so hard for our children for something that should be a right for them.
Well, and we're told it's a right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read, it's like, education is a right, that's why you go in and you get the IEPs and you do all of these things. And yet you had to fight so hard, and it was emotionally draining. It was physically draining. It was financially draining.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I mean, there were times that you had to fight, not just with your voice, but with a lawyer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We had to hire a lawyer, and, tens of thousands of dollars later out of our own pocket, not reimbursed by anybody, and I was beyond grateful that we could do this. And what broke my heart was the majority of people could never afford to do that.
Right.
And I'm like, this is just not okay.
Right.
And unfortunately, there are systems that take advantage of parents that are not educated, and just accept what is given to them because they don't think there's anything else that they could do, and now there are opportunities for advocates that are supported through state funding and things of that nature. But even in that space, often they're not offered to parents.
They have to know to get them.
Ask.
Right. And if you don't know to ask, I noticed a similar kind of thing in the medical system. My husband had brain cancer, and, I had to fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes, get ugly and demand and stomp my feet and refuse and all of the things. And I wondered about people who might not be able to, or who didn't have someone standing there, when they came in with whatever they come in with, and there wasn't someone standing there to say, no, oh, what are we doing? And so you had to do that same kind of thing where it was like, you had to know what you could fight for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe, and I know at this point, there's a lesson in when you hear to do something, right? Like you need to use your voice and do said thing, right? Whether it's in the medical world or in the educational world, right? Like some of those systems are set up, right, to benefit them.
Yeah.
Not that they're not healing you and not that they're not benefiting you, but they're going to heal you and benefit you on what's going to benefit them the best.
Right. On their terms.
Right. On their terms. And you've got to, like you said, advocate, use your voice, deny, stomp your feet, and be like, no, this is not okay. This is not what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And, people often just come into, and I will speak from my own experience, where I was like, well, you're the expert. You know better.
You should know better. Right.
And I'm like, but then I began to realize, no, I'm the expert. This is my life. These are my children.
Right.
I know them best. And I still at 22 have to advocate for my kids. Now that my oldest is aging out of the system, I'm going through this process all over again. Right. And having to navigate, like, okay,
how to get them in the adult services section of all of this, as opposed to the children's services section of all of this. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. What has been the reaction from friends and family to because sometimes memoirs, people will read it and then they have a reaction like, why did you say that? Or I can't believe that you put that piece out there. Or I didn't know you were going through all of that, or all of the things that come up. I'm just curious, what's the reaction been for you?
The majority of it is, I didn't know your struggle. Like, I didn't know, like, you masked it so well. I didn't know, like, I knew it was hard for you, but I didn't know the internal struggle. And thank you, for sharing that. There was a lot of like sisterhood, a lot of, wow, like, you've really been through it. And thank you for sharing. And like, it just became it was like we unlocked a new level of friendship, or relationship in them reading it. And then most of the people have just said, thank you. Just thank you for putting that out there. Thank you for giving me that inside perspective, because I would never have known that you had to fight that hard for some of these things, or, things that, I went through in general, like some of them, I didn't even know that, your brother had committed suicide, things of that nature, friends that maybe I didn't meet until later in life and things like that. So, it's been extremely well received thus far. No one's been a naysayer as of yet. The names, what I will say, the names in the book are not the names of my family members. I did change them. I think I mentioned that in the book, because just to protect, the kiddos. And
you don't want it. It isn't. This wasn't their choice to write this story. This was your choice. And so then I
asked them, and though they all did pick their names, they all picked.
Oh, good.
What name do you want me to call you? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm not going to use your real name because you didn't choose to be in this book. I'm putting you in this book. And they're like, oh, okay. So they kind of thought that was fun.
Yeah, I'm sure that is great. Was there a part for you that was the most difficult to write?
My mom.
Your mom.
When my mom passed. Yeah. That was the hardest one to navigate. Revisit. A very long goodbye with dementia and her mental state. And it was a lot of me coming into a different maturity, of life, being the parent to the parent and kind of all of that. And just revisiting that, because it wasn't, when I wrote the book, she had only been gone for like a year at that point when I started writing. So it was still fresh. And so going over that, I was like, we're going to let that one sit a bit because that was really still pretty emotional.
Well, you were still very much in the grief of it. Yeah. And I recently lost my husband to his brain cancer. And I've had people say, oh, you have a story there. And it's like, yeah, I probably do.
Right.
But I'm not writing it yet because I'm still living it, and while you're still kind of in the midst of it'd be like trying to write a story about a war that you're currently like,
right.
The battle's raging around you. And it's like, yeah, this isn't the time. You wait until the end where you can look back and like breathe through it, so
Yeah.
no, I can understand that. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your journey. So, in addition to the fact that you have dealing with your boys, you're also dealing with, you had depression, you had anxiety, and then you ended up with cancer. Like just let's make things even harder, right? like you lose your brother, you lose your mother, you have boys that you're fighting for, you have depression, anxiety. Oh yeah, let's throw cancer in the mix.
Yeah.
So, and here you sit smiling today, and someone who were to just meet you for the first time, like I am right now, would never know that all of this is part of who you are. Let's talk about that journey.
Yeah. So I would say even throughout college, I navigated depression and anxiety just from experiences that I had. And as I came into my adult years, I really had not learned healthy coping skills, right, to help me navigate that part of my life. And two, when you're in anxiety and depression, it's a cycle that you become comfortable with.
Yeah. You know what to expect.
Yeah. There's a space of, I know what to expect, and to not live life with it. It's like, oh, what, this is new, so it was me learning how to create self-regulation skills, as well as behavior skills, life choices that brought me out of those seasons. And I did that, prayer and yoga, working out, things of that nature that helped me to process all the things I was going through. And those were things that I kept. So when, I'm going through these things of, the issues with my boys, really brought a lot of anxiety on, especially with the lawyers and the school districts and just them growing. And how do I support you? What do I do? I don't know. I've never
done this before. Right.
I haven't had family members with disability. Like, this is all new territory to me. And I'm a new parent, right? Like, what is this? And there was no rule book, no nothing. And at the same time, just navigating who I was, going through divorce, right? Going through relationships. And I was just a hot mess for quite some time. And it was my faith truly that, brought me out of it. It was God just really, truly being there, waiting for me, supporting me, guiding me, bringing me people into my life that I knew were there on purpose, like my husband now, and bringing me to the next level of my ability. And in being able to see those gifts in some of those moments, right? It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows. There was a lot of dark clouds and rain. And there were still those really awesome days where I was like, okay, I can cling to this. I can hold on to this. And then, as you begin a practice of self-healing, right? And kind of self-realization of like, my life does not need to be like this. I actually don't have to live like this. And I can choose to live healthier, stronger. And that's going to take something from me. That's going to take the work of consistent exercise, healthy diet, good sleep, good habits, good people in my life, right? Making wiser choices for myself and building upon building upon building of those things are why I'm here looking at you smiling and saying, I am in full remission, haven't had any issues, just had a doctor's appointment yesterday just for a recheck. And everyone's like, you look fabulous. We're great. We'll see you in a year,
thank goodness.
So, I can sit here and say, I have overcome by the grace of God, that I sit here and am strong, probably stronger and healthier than I've ever been in my life at almost 50. I'll be 50 in November. And, and that's because, I've done the work to get here, and it hasn't always been pretty. Certainly.
No, and I think that's the thing that people sometimes think is, well, so yeah, you start eating healthy, but that isn't the way it works, because I don't know about you, but like when I'm stressed, I want to eat crap. And
Yeah.
so here you are trying hard to like change your lifestyle, and then everything's falling down the drain. And the first thing you want to do is reach for the ice cream,
Oh yeah.
you know, and you have to like, so it's this battle. Changing habits is one of the hardest things in the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You
For
know,
sure.
because it's like, it's so easy just to go back to the old way, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. What you know, right?
Yes.
Especially because it's your default. It's like, oh, well, I know this.
I know this. Yeah. I don't have the energy right now to do anything differently. And so to fight through all of that to come out on the other side.
Yeah.
So I know that you were teaching yoga for a while. Are you still doing that?
I have not taught in a few years, just because of life, and there's not a lot of opportunity where I live to do said thing. Whereas in New Jersey, it was like every other building was a yoga.
Yeah.
You know? So it's very different down here in Tennessee. And my priorities began to shift, right? Yoga, that came into my life for a reason and a purpose and a skill to build and to develop. And I still practice. And that doesn't mean I teach in that way. Right. I will like support, I do some work with youth, and for when we talk about self-regulation, we'll do some yoga together and things like that.
Things along that line.
I'm not in a studio teaching, you know, on a regular basis anymore.
Right. I think that it's amazing too, how these different things came into your life, like the practice of yoga and other things that, like you said, were like a stepping stool to the next thing that you were going to need to do. And then the next thing that you were going to need to do. Mm-hmm. The book came out a year ago. Yeah. Right. When did you start writing it?
About a year, maybe 9 months before that. It actually didn't take as long to write the book as I thought it would. And I let it sit for a minute before I went to start editing it. Yeah. Because it was like, I knew I wanted to write the book probably even while my mom was still alive. I was like, this has to happen. And I was like, it's just not time yet. And like, I finally, came to the point, I'm like, this needs to happen. My plan this year is to get this book written. And that was, just after the cancer, more or less. Like, it was like, okay, like the cancer's done. I said I was going to do this. Like, this is going to be my,
this is the time now. Right. Yeah. How are your sons doing now? So you have one that is at the age of like coming out of student services. I'm assuming your younger son then is still able to do some of the student services, although you say he has a job. So I don't know how are they doing? How are you finding this piece?
Yes, they're doing beautifully. They're both thriving. Since we moved here, I have to say the experience that they have had here in Tennessee has just been transformational, and they have blossomed. They are just loving life now. So the oldest will graduate next week. So when this comes out, he will have graduated. And that is, like I mentioned earlier, we are navigating what's next for him. There's not a lot of known services, day services for adults with special needs. It's more of like the senior population. Right. And so I'm navigating what that all looks like now and how to transition him out of this. So right now he's doing great. In a couple of months, that may be a different story.
We'll have another conversation and find out.
And my middle son, he's thriving as well, but he chose to graduate, after his senior year, his quote unquote first senior year, official senior year. And he was able to get a job at the local grocery store. So he has kept that job, and he hasn't needed any other services, to support him, other than he works, probably roughly 25 hours a week, and he loves it. And then he's home, and we do some other community things during the, day to have fun and to keep him busy. But if the job weren't to work out, he could still go back into the school system until he's 22 for job support if he so desired. And, right now we don't need that. So, he's doing really well.
Fantastic.
for both.
Fantastic. I have a question, and maybe this will be like off limits, and you'll tell me I'm not allowed to ask it. But I would have been terrified to have a third child.
Oh, I was.
Okay.
When I found out I was pregnant, I sat in the bathroom and cried for probably about a half an hour before I came out and told my husband that I was pregnant, because I was just terrified. I was like, oh my God, what if he is worse? Like, what if all the what ifs went in my head? And then I'm like, what if he's not? And then it's like, well, what if he's not? Right. Like, so all these things kind of come. And then I came, had my kind of cry because of course I was pregnant. I was a hot emotional mess.
Yeah.
And, and we were very excited, that we were having him. And truly, I wanted to give my husband a child. He was like, I have 2 kids, I'm good. Like, I love these boys as my own. And at the same time, he was thrilled that we were going to have our own child. And we prayed a lot. There was a lot of prayer that Joseph would not have Fragile X. At the same time, I was like, Lord, this is in your hands. Like I'm here for whatever it is, whether or not he has it, this baby's coming. Like this happened to this baby. Right. And, I think I was more surprised. We got the results, like, I don't know, 10 days after he was born. And they were like, yeah, they were like, we just wanted to give you your results. And I was like, for what? Because like, usually these things take weeks. Right. And they were like, the Fragile X results. And I was, and of course the whole experience comes back again. Right. Like I'm sure like, yeah. I get hot and then I get pale and then I get, all of the things. Like, right. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, he's fine. There's nothing there. I was like, wait, what? Wait, are you sure? I was like, do we need to do another test? Yeah. Like in my head, because it was almost like too good to be true. And I think I just cried hysterically. Yeah. Like, and just in gratitude and Thanksgiving. And then. And in postpartum 10 days after the baby's born. Exactly. Right? I was still on and all those things. And, and then there's the space too of like, so why didn't Zeke or Eli get to be that way? You kind of have these philosophical perspectives, and it's like, but then I wouldn't change them. Right. Like it's not that I want them to be different, but maybe I do, but I don't. But if someone said, I'll give you a magic wand and we'll take this away from Zeke and Eli now, I'd be like, no, that's who they are. That's who they are. Would I like to protect them from certain things or allow them to maybe experience certain things? I don't. Maybe, but that's from my limited perspective, right? They enjoy the world in such a different way. They have been my teachers in such grand ways throughout their lives. I'm like, why would I want to change that? Right. Because they see things in a very different light and it's very simple for them, life. And their joy is real. And it's like, it's refreshing, right? Yes. To see life from their eyes at the same time, right? Do I feel like they're missing something? Do they feel, not accepted? Do they feel, like they want to be able to do something, but they can't, you know what I mean? And that's a lot of people, in this world, not just people with, disabilities. So yeah, it was an awesome experience to have our youngest, and he's 12 now. And we are experiencing those beautiful preteen years that I didn't really get to experience with the other two in the way that I am now. And it's a good time. I was going to say, which is really crazy because you're a third-time mom, right? In some ways experiencing life as a first-time mom, because it's such a different experience. It is. And I was able to enjoy our youngest and his development in such a profound way because it was so different from his brothers that I was just like blown away at what typical development is. Look like. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, she could do all these things. Like, because I didn't have already. Right. Yeah. Right. The older two. So the older two, the first word by the time, they were like 3, my oldest was was older before he, spoke and his speech came out, and certain things in his ability to walk and things like that. And I was like, we celebrated every little thing for him.
Right.
And here my third is like, up and running and like doing all the things, at all the typical times. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is miraculous, right?
and probably I don't even have my house baby proofed yet. I didn't know we were going to be going anywhere so fast.
That was great. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Willow, what's next for you? You've written this book. Yeah. I know that you're going to be, constantly advocating for your sons, but what do you see as what's coming next?
Yeah, what's next right now is in fact advocating for Zeke and where he's going next. But I am on another adventure of becoming a spiritual mentor. In addition to the coaching that I do for, the holistic health and leadership coaching. So that's kind of where I'm at, really enjoying this journey of growth in my faith and developing, that next chapter.
Fantastic. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, reach out about this book, reach out about any of the different aspects of this book, what's the best way to do that?
They could message me through Instagram at Willow Paige. They could message me on Facebook, which is Willow Clerici, or my email address, which is willowpage.co@gmail.com. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
I'll have all of that in the show notes, guys. Run out, grab the book, Special Forces. It is definitely a good read. There are times where you're just like, oh, it's overwhelming, but I just love the way you always found the light. And that's the thing I think that was so refreshing is it helps people understand that even in the worst of times, there is light.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of seeking it and really recognizing it. I think it's always there. Sometimes we just aren't recognizing it for what it is. So grab the book, review the book. And Willow, I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much. It was so fun, Terry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.